Hello, anybody watching? I just once again, just as I was about to say I was by myself, Lisa showed up.
I do that. Well, I don't have my camera on, do I? There we go. Hi.
Yeah.
I got a clingy one today, so.
Clingy goof.
Oh, you still working on that vest?
If by still working on, you mean still in the early stages of and have to finish it by the end of next week?
Oh, goodness. Time crunch.
Yeah, well, you know me. That's when I tend to get the most done.
Same. You okay?
As one of my classmates used to say, if it weren't for the last minute, we'd never get anything done.
Nope. Very much a procrastinator lifestyle. Karen should be here shortly.
She is here. She just showed up.
Oh, okay, good.
You know me, I'm always late.
Welcome. See, yes, I'm still working on the vest. Lisa, what you working on?
Puppy dog.
Lisa's working on petting the Wiggles. Karen, what you working on?
I'm gonna make some earrings.
Oh, you're making the Celtic knot?
Yep.
I was telling Riley about the. Oh, I was telling a coworker about that today.
Yeah.
All right, see if he'll settle for a minute. Maybe I can eat my dinner.
Nah, unimportant. So, Karen, did you get the chapters read for this week?
I did.
Because Lisa was slightly freaking out about them during work, more specifically about you needing to read them.
I know she called me on her way home. She said, Karen, if you haven't read the book, you need to read the book.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the happiest part of it made me, the other part made me so mad.
You still have to read it, though.
I did. I would like the thread to into the needle, please.
I will not confirm or deny anything. I will only say this is not the end of the book.
No, I know. I'm hoping it's like Pride and Prejudice, where he's like in love with her and she's just like stupid and bullheaded and like, no, I can never like you, and that is my hope. I'm clinging to that hope.
I'm just gonna keep biting my tongue.
She's physically biting her tongue. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the first of this week's 2 chapters, which was chapter 32, right?
Yes.
I'm not good with numbers or titles, or numbers or names. So I'm like, let's say a number of a chapter or a title of a chapter.
I don't remember the chapter title.
I can't remember the chapter title.
It's the chapter in which the things happened.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna start giving them friends-like names.
Mm-hmm.
The one where so something's up with Beth.
She's all mopey and sad. And her mother is worried. As a good mother should.
And for a change, Beth won't confide in her.
So Marnie enlists the help of Joe.
who has a very adult moment and was like, Beth is not a child, so her problem may not be childlike. I will
And you
see what's going on.
You tell me that Beth is now 18, which means Amy is 17, which means Joe is 20. No, she's gotta be 21 because
Yeah.
yeah. Look at the confirmation of their ages.
Yes, we have reached
Yay.
confirmation of their ages.
Our babies are getting all grown up.
And
I
just like
know.
Marmy, just like Marmy, we're just like, how did they grow up so fast?
Except that, unlike Marmy, we genuinely skipped major chunks of their lives. So Joe's conclusion after observing Beth for a while
Is that Beth is in love with Lori, who was not even the guy who passed underneath the window.
Yes, it was. They just called him a guy. They do that a lot.
they did what?
They do that a lot. Well, they'll say a man did this, and it ends up being Lori. Like the man watching Joe from across the street when she published her first
Oh yeah.
book. They call him a man a lot just to like throw you off a bit, I think. Because then he confirmed plans for that night. So I'm assuming that it was Lori.
It was Lori, yes.
Okay.
It was Lori who was outside.
All right, so it was Lori. Okay, well, I was just being stupid and thought it wasn't Lori. Okay. She gets in her head that that Beth loves Lori, and Lori must love Beth because he treats her so much more delicately and gently than anybody else. So it must mean that he likes Beth. Oh, I just spilled pizza everywhere.
Oh no.
Except that nobody else in the family has ever thought so, because everybody's
Everyone
always thought that Lori likes Joe, which Joe will not hear a word about.
No
I
matter
love
how
how
many
someone
letters
like
Lori
third
writes.
person and it's like all of the love letters that never really got written or sent. I was like, aha! He does send them or write them. He just doesn't send them. But yes. Then so he's there and she's trying to let him hang out with Beth, and he said he sits on the couch with her and they do their normal joke flirtiness thingy. They're berating each other, which is really flirty.
Was Beth still in the room at this point? And that's what I kind of got vague on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Beth
Beth
was
was
Beth
still
was
in
still
the-
there. She just wasn't she was like on the other side of the room, and instead of going and sitting by Beth, Joe forgot to like barricade herself and make it so that he couldn't sit by her. So as soon as the opportunity presented itself, he did.
I think it's one of the reasons why Beth was so sad.
I was wondering how she had overheard the whole conversation. He was telling her he needed to look for a silly girl, but after college, no, a sweet girl, a nice girl, not a silly girl.
Yeah, an honest, modest one.
And he's sitting there like basically saying, I like you.
Because like the ones that I like won't let me send them anything. Well, I know it's just being silly. Like he basically just said he likes you.
And
He doesn't want to hear it.
Joe still thinks that he's saying that he likes Beth. Except she does eventually get a clue that
He likes her.
Yeah. Beth is crying that night.
Yeah. And she's like, don't worry. You can tell. She asked what's wrong, and Beth's like, no, I can't tell you yet, but I will soon. Yeah.
Mhm.
And a few days later, she goes tell their mother that she's going to go work in New York as a governess.
Yep.
Which I can't see Joe being a governess.
Well, she taught her other siblings.
That's true, she did. But it's like,
she's not she's more of a tutor young ladies kind of governess. She's more of a teacher, not a
yeah, not like a governess, like
not like a teach
No.
refinement kind of governess.
right. It's like a basic teacher kind of thing.
Yeah.
But still, I thought it was interesting. My
Um
only worry is that she's really connected to Mr. Bear or Professor Bear. Well, I'm skipping ahead.
I think it's hilarious that she's like make sure to specify like, but
He's
don't
over.
worry, Marmy, he's like 40 years old. So
He's just a friend.
no.
Nothing else happened. Like,
He's over 40, so I can peep on him. It's okay.
tutoring, not like that's the other thing. The way she says like I'm gonna peep in on him, like sounds so salacious. Like peep in on him tutoring a student, not like in his bed chambers or something.
And then he said that he peeps on her too. And you're just like, oh geez. Not that kind of peeping.
There were a lot of things. I still can't figure out where my copy of this went. I've been listening to it at work, but I can't find my print copy. And there were several things in the letters from Joe that I kept wondering about your reactions to, but I can't remember them off the top of my head, and I would have to be able to flip back through the book to find them. But I cannot for the life of me figure out what I did with it, which is the primary reason that I've been listening to the chapters instead of reading them, because I can't find the book.
well, chapter 33 is called Joe's Journal, and it's basically Joe writing letters home like Amy did.
Yeah.
Except that Joe writes letters like she's writing a journal, so it's a fitting title.
I like how she writes that she knows that her letters are not even going to be as interesting as Amy's. She dreads the postage.
Because even though she's using thin paper and written finely, it's gonna be big letter.
I mean, she is quite verbose.
She is a writer.
Really?
So yeah, we've mentioned Mr. Bear already, but she's in this kind of boarding house, where she
There's
is,
multiple teachers, multiple children, multiple families.
yeah. And I think she's there because she teaches the children of the woman who owns the boarding house, and then also teaches some other children there as well. Is that?
I think she's just directly with the owner's daughter.
Just directly with the owner's daughters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think I have a few different things that blend together in my brain. So anyway, so she's doing that in New York and writing to her family about her time, and I love her comment that she hates common people. Whereby I really don't think she means that the way that like Amy would mean that. Like, not like, you know, in a commoners kind of way, but like people who are not
people who all just are like cookie cutter basic people, like the way they
Yeah.
think, the way they
Yeah. Basically, like they're so basic. Until you said that, I never realized that Joe's kind of a hipster.
the interesting people who are quirky, not the people who are just so normal.
That's what I was trying to think of. That was what I was thinking of when I was listening to it earlier, that I could picture her saying something like, ugh, these normies. Yep, she does not like the common everyday rustics.
Nope.
But not out of snobbery, but because she wants somebody to have a different turn of mind, a different way of thinking, and not just be boring and basic. And she has found a friend in Professor Bear, Professor Bear.
There you go.
Not pronounced bear, as people pronounce it, nor is it pronounced beer, but somewhere in
I know.
between, as only the German can do.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that people tease him by giving him nicknames of all sorts of different bear-related things.
Right. And Tina rides him like a bear.
I mean, is that like a bear?
Tina needs her bear.
Elephant. It was an elephant.
Yes.
Oh, her elephant. Yes. Sorry. I thought that was so cute. She's like, Tina needs her bear.
He's her teddy.
A little 3 or 4 year
Joe
old.
has her teddy and Tina needs her bear.
That was so cute.
And given that this was before the teddy bear was actually a thing.
It was so cute.
Yeah, they're adorable. And yeah, and so Joe starts and when the landlady doesn't have time to be doing his mending for him, and he can't really do it properly himself, so she starts doing it for him kind of in secret, and when he catches her at it.
The landlady, but going through people's rooms, just
What?
she's just like rummaging through his room looking for handkerchiefs. And I'm just like, invasion of privacy.
No, I think in this case it's more like she's the landlady, but she's not like.
Yeah, she's like the mother cleaning up her son's room when he comes.
Yeah, basically, she's like trying to do the laundry. And so she can't keep up with all of the mending for him and everything else she has to do, so Joe volunteers to do it, and so he catches her at it and teases her about how, like, you guys think I'm too stupid to realize that suddenly there are no more holes in these and no more buttons falling off of things, and
My shirt grew buttons.
Yeah. And he's so funny. He cracks me up. And he's like, either you let me teach you German, and we'll make the time for it, or no more playing fairy to me. So they make this agreement, and she's mending his things in exchange for German lessons. And
he's so kind and so stupid.
What?
She goes, he's so kind and patient when she calls herself stupid about it.
He just cracks me up. He cracks me up anyway. And then the recording I was listening to, the person did, like, they had the best, like, German accent for him and the best French accent for the little girl, like while still sounding like a little girl speaking with a French accent. And I was just like, I don't know who, because I listened to it in like, it's the, I really wish I could understand what they're saying, because they always say this is it literally could be livervox, liverbox, livervox. I don't know. There's a B or a V in each of the words, and I don't know what they're actually saying. It's a something recording. But it's recorded by volunteers, and not even all of the chapters of one book are recorded by the same person, and occasionally it changes who it's recorded by partway through a chapter. And I don't know who recorded that particular chapter, but she was fabulous. And just like the best accents. And like listening to how she was reading Bear and his accent and his funny comments and everything, and like I could really hear how he really would have been saying it. And it was just so fabulous. And because I love him as a character anyway, it just like was that much better for me. Anyway, I can't remember if there was anything else after that.
I really like the part where she's like trying to learn and she's not sure whether to laugh or cry because she can't get it. He just like slams the book down like, this is impossible. And she starts to cry and he just leaves and she's like, oh no, I've upset him. And he comes back with a fairy tale book. Let's try this. And chucks the book across the room. We don't need this one. Bad book.
Let's get rid of this bad book that has caused us so much misery.
This isn't the book's fault.
Or turmoil, or whatever it is that he says.
Yeah, he just blames the book and chucks it across the room.
And Joe's like packing up. Oh, I clearly I am incapable of this, and he totally just, nope, we're gonna find. And I've said before that there are things about Joe that make me think of like neurodivergence, and that was it. Another thing, like Joe does not learn the way that other people learn, and she feels like she's just not smart enough at something. I mean, she even said to him, "No, I'm too stupid to learn that." And she knows she's a great writer, even though she calls them her what does she call them? Her what?
Her rubbish.
Her rubbish. Thank you. I was like, what? I was going to say dribbles, and I was like, no, that's not it. Her rubbish. And but even though she calls it that, she knows she's a good writer. And she loves writing, and she writes all the time, but she is not a good student, and she is definitely not good at focusing on things. She's not good at knowing what is or isn't the right thing to say most of the time, except for with the few people that she really truly knows and understands properly, which she can't really even explain why she knows and understands those specific people. Like, so much about Joe just screams neurodivergence to me. And that was just another thing. Like she's just, I cannot get this. And her whole life it's been, you can't learn from these things. You can't learn French, you can't learn, the different languages. You're just not smart enough for this.
Yeah, it was like Amy was smart enough, but you're not smart enough.
Exactly. And then instead Professor Bear's like, oh, this stupid book that's not smart enough to know how to teach you the way that you need to learn. Let's find a book that's smart enough to teach you the way that you need to. And I was like, yes, that. One more thing I love about him. He really is one of my favorite characters, along
He,
with,
he
you know,
seems like a
the
great
entire March
character.
family and Lori. And okay, like I love most of the characters in this book.
Laurie gets mentioned in the fact that apparently he stopped smoking and he's growing his hair out long. By smoking, I think they mean the pipe, like smoking on a pipe.
I'm not. Did they mention a pipe at any point?
They
Or
didn't, but like I don't know if cigarettes were really a thing around this time.
cigarettes existed also. They had to roll them themselves. They didn't sell them in cartons. They sold the loose tobacco and then the papers to roll themselves or to stuff the tobacco into a pipe. But while pipes were more common for like certain, especially for like somebody like his grandfather would have been more likely to be smoking a pipe, but being in college, even though like of a class, like he's rich enough that it would not be strange for him to be smoking a pipe, and the cigarettes were often more like a lower class kind of thing, but he's also younger.
I thought
And
it was the cigars. I thought he was smoking cigars.
okay, that
'Cause
would
he
make
also comes from that
more
higher
sense too.
class as well.
Yeah,
Um,
cigars would also, yeah, cigars would make sense, or cigarettes that he rolled himself. I mean, not that like nobody his age would have ever smoked a pipe, but I think that it was from what I understand, and I haven't like studied it that thoroughly because frankly, I just assume everybody never smoked ever. But from what I understand, I think that it was less likely that people around his age would have been smoking a pipe, just because they would have associated that with like um, older people, and maybe when they're like in, you know, going into law or whatever, like starting a profession, and they're like, well, maybe I should start this now because that will give me a sense of um, maturity or something. But during college, I think it would have been more of a sense of like, oh my gosh, how old are you? Are you seriously it would have been like today somebody showing up to college with us wearing a sweater vest or something, like, how old are you? Which at my college was not actually unlikely, but you know, at most colleges today. But again, that's the impression I have, but that could also be an impression that I've gathered because of Hollywood and because of modern. Hey, Lisa forgot to turn her alarm off. That could be an impression that I've gathered because of Hollywood and because of modern modern sensibilities kind of sneaking in and coloring my perception of things, because I don't have anything distinct that I can point to like that is definitely what that is, but it's just I think that might be true. And now I've talked way too long about what he may or may not have been smoking.
Yeah. And she's like, Beth, take care of him, will you? And I was like, stop shoving him onto Beth.
I got hung up more on why is he growing his hair out? Why do they have a problem with his hair being short?
Like I think that's the thing. Like grown men did. Boys kept it short, men kept it long. If you looked at most things from that time, the older men had long hair and ponytails, whereas the men had short hair. You know, the boys had short hair. The mature men they took it had long hair.
In like the late 17 early 1800s, but by like the 1860s I don't feel like that was as true. And This would have been, let me see, it started in 1860, so this would have been 1866 by now, right?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Let's Google men's hairstyles 1866. Let's switch to American upper class men's hairstyles 1866. No, they're maybe he had it like ridiculously buzz short.
Maybe.
Because like they did have like the long enough to style it. But I think the ones who had it long enough to put in a ponytail were usually, actually no, because even what I was thinking with that was actually early 1800s. Because I'm thinking like Pride and Prejudice, but so Pride
Like
and Prejudice.
Silver
Well, I was thinking like Wickham in Pride and Prejudice has in most period adaptations of Pride and Prejudice as opposed to modern adaptations. Wickham has longer hair that's in a ponytail, and Darcy has like kind of shaggy, longish, but not very long hair, sort of fringe longish hair, but not long enough to tie back into a ponytail. And that would have been common in the late 17 and early 1800s. But Jane Austen first wrote Pride and Prejudice in the late 1700s, but then she set it aside, and then she wrote Sense and Sensibility, and then she published Sense and Sensibility before she published Pride and Prejudice. So she didn't publish Pride and Prejudice until 1812, I think it was, something like that. And there are some references in the edition that she published that to things that were like from the early 1800s. So she had clearly revised it in some ways of things that hadn't been in the original draft that she had written in the 1700s, because there are things in there that didn't exist yet at the time. But she, because of that, people debate whether it took place in the late 1700s or in the early 1800s or whatever. So anyway, that's where my brain was when I was thinking about the guys with the ponytails. So it's like, I was like, no, because if it was, and then I was like, well, I guess that depends on which Pride and Prejudice you're going by. And then I was like, no, because regardless of whether it's like 1790 whatever or 1812 or whatever, that's still earlier than 1866 by quite a bit. But I don't know, any of the pictures I'm seeing, see, and even then I'm trying to click on stuff and then I have a picture of Darcy show up. Like, no, that's not what I'm looking at. But yeah, pretty much everything I'm seeing is shorter, but like long enough to style. I wonder if there's an actual answer. In Little Women, why was Jo
Another part of the things that Joe was mentioned was when she would go to dinner at the table. It was this big event, even though it was just like a normal dinner. And how awkward she would feel, and how awkward everyone thought she was. And the ball on New Year's Eve, it was like a masquerade ball or costume ball. Everybody went as somebody else. Like Tina when it's Titania, the fairy queen. Like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh. And how nobody knew it was her. They were all shocked to find out it was her. Because they didn't think that she could laugh and have fun and dance like that.
Right. I love that she's like, and they think I'm cold because I am to them because I don't like them. Basically. I mean, that's a very abbreviated version, but that's basically what she says. Um, this part.
Document.
Can't I find an answer to it? I was trying to see if like I found this chapter on SparkNotes, but I can't find like an actual comment about.
Oh, it's just a passing thing. I'm not even, like I said, I don't know much about history or their fashion senses, but it was just a guess from what I've seen of movies of that kind of earlier era.
I just want to know why she was like. It was written like not long after the time that it was set. This is really gonna bug me now.
Lee, did you have any favorite parts of the chapter?
Um, yeah, I liked a lot of the interactions with Mr. Bear. I also I like the ending part, which we haven't discussed yet, which was the January letter where she talks about her Christmas and New Year's stuff. Um, how she got the letter and was a little disappointed it was only a letter until the next day she got the package.
It was that evening, actually.
That evening, and it was just like, even though it was all beat up, she was so excited. And I liked how everybody got something for everybody. Like, even though obviously this boarding house doesn't have a lot of money because everybody's like teaching everybody's kids. But they still found a way to get something for everybody. All of them did. And I thought that was really sweet and precious. So,
Yeah,
Not all of them, but just Mr. Bear for everybody and everybody for Mr. Bear.
yeah.
But sure,
I
Joe
love.
didn't go buying everybody presents. But
Yeah. Yeah.
and then
I still
the present he gave her, she like treasured it, called it her library.
like
And
her
it's just
library.
a book of Shakespeare's works. Which now every day everybody knows Shakespeare and all his, at least most of his works, some of his more famous ones. Twelfth Night being one of my personal favorites.
I think, well, I mean, at that time, people knew most people knew Shakespeare's works as well. I mean, that was like a 300 years after he had been writing and publishing. But she must have either just missed that in her education, or knowing Joe, just not really paid attention, which is kind of funny considering how much she loves literature and plays.
She was talking about how she did not know his work was so various, and like, she didn't know he had so many. Like she definitely knew of Shakespeare,
Oh
but
yeah,
didn't know he had so many works and stuff like that.
yeah, but I just think that, I mean, I'm sure she knew one or two of his things. I just think that she probably, I just could really see her having like that having been a thing that was taught while she was in school, and her having been zoning and not realizing it having been taught. Just a thought on my part, but I mean, I'm sure her school wouldn't have had all of the works of Shakespeare. So that being just a thing that the teacher had said and not something that she had
Probably didn't think most of his literature as stuff needed for people to know as an everyday thing. You know, they would thought it
right.
was some fun hobby for plays to go watch and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
not something to read for, you know, to
Well,
philosophize on.
I mean, it is that like has always been, well, not always, not when it first came out, but in in the centuries posthumously, it has been considered that highbrow intellectual thing. But yeah, it wouldn't be something that they would like expect them to know every single thing that they did or anything. I mean, especially because the girls all had to leave school earlier because they had to go to work.
Yeah.
So it's not like they were doing school through high school or anything. Can't find anything that explains why anybody that gives anybody's thoughts on why Joe was glad that Laurie was growing his hair out.
Maybe it was just that she liked his long hair.
Or maybe he always kept it buzz cut, and so growing it out means that it's no longer buzz cut short or something.
It's like a more respectable style for a respectable gentleman.
Yeah. I think I remember
makes
reading
sense.
a couple of chapters earlier. He and his friends always had buzz cut short hair.
That would make sense. See, I don't remember that, so I'm glad that you do.
Could be something I made up, but I think that's true.
No, the details escape me so very, very easily. Oofed. Wow. We still have like 15 minutes left, and I think we've about covered it.
We covered it a while ago.
I mean, we had some very, very important stuff to go over in minute detail, like what Laurie might have been smoking and why it mattered if his hair grew out. And whether Joe knew Shakespeare's works were so varied, or didn't know they were so varied because she didn't have access to them, or because she hadn't been paying attention. All those essential things. Okay, random question. Did anybody, and I ask this because I did, did anybody have a favorite of the nicknames that they give Professor Bear as they like tease him about his last name?
There's the Ulysses one, which I can't remember the whole thing, but I
What?
like the
what?
Ulysses one.
Ulysses. Yeah, I can't remember the whole thing, but yeah.
Yeah.
I liked Ursa Major.
That's what it was. It was Ursa Major. That's what it was.
So I looked up the men's hairstyle too. I was trying to see if there was a reason. And by growing out, they only must mean by like a few inches, because long enough to just be like
Styleable.
pushed back, not even necessarily ponytail, just long
Skater
enough to
boy.
be styled.
Skater boy hair.
A little
Oh,
a
shorter.
little bit longer than Skater Boy.
I think,
Um,
honestly, I think part of why I have trouble picturing that is because I so thoroughly have the characters from the 1994, 95, 6, whatever year that was, I think it's 94 movie in my brain. And because I grew up watching that movie, I've never been able to shake them from my brain. And that's Christian Bale. And he most definitely did not have a buzz cut. And Christian Bale's hair did not need growing out. It's Christian Bale's hair. Nice, thick, flowy hair. I actually had a similar thought regarding that movie when she commented about trying to hide behind the lady, but because she's tall, because Winona Ryder, not tall. Fabulous, fabulous actress. Love her. Not tall.
Oh, not tall and lanky like Joe.
I love her, and she is cemented in my brain as Joe. I still haven't, I think after we finish reading this, we talked about watching that, and I would like to try to watch the newer one also if you two are up for it, but I haven't been able to bring myself to watch it yet, partly because I so love that old one and I grew up with it, and I know I'm going to have a hard time watching a different one. But I don't I don't know if it matters who else I see in the role. I don't know if I can ever see anybody besides Winona Ryder as Joe. So, do either of you have any predictions moving forward after the events of these chapters?
I was gonna look ahead and see what the chapters are called. So, the next one is called Friends and Heartache.
What?
Chapter 34 is called Friend, and chapter 35 is called Heartache.
Yeah. Hey, look a couple more chapters ahead.
Yeah. Best Secret is the next one. Oh, and 45 is Daisy and Demi. That's Meg's kids.
There's the fact that there's one upcoming a couple sessions from now called Best Secret that I particularly wanted to point out.
Yes.
Also, we did find it out.
So, question. And I will not tell you one way or the other. Just question. The secret that Joe sussed out of Bess, is it accurate or is it not accurate?
I'm thinking it might be slightly accurate. And I'm thinking it's very much an Emma misguided matchmaking. She leading one on when the other person really doesn't like them, kind of deal there. I think that
I laugh at that only because the Pod and Prejudice podcast is almost to the end of Emma right now. And they just last week had the episode where and the thing with this podcast is that the two hosts. One of them kind of grew up with Jane Austen stuff. The other one has never read a single Jane Austen, never watched a single Jane Austen movie, never any of it until they started making this podcast. Like when they were reading the first book, they did Pride and Prejudice first, of course. When they were doing this, she genuinely did not know that Darcy was good and that Wickham was bad. And she's gotten more familiar with Jane Austen's writing, she's gotten better at predicting what's going to happen. But they just last week saw or did the release their episode with the point that Emma finally realizes that she's actually been in love with Knightley this whole time. And so it's an every other week podcast, so I'm really looking forward to next week's episode. But as I was saying this, asking this question, I was kind of hearing Becca from that podcast in my brain, because she always asks questions of Molly, and one of them is always predictions going forward. And so that's why, as you started saying that and comparing it to Emma, I started laughing. Not in any way because of what is or isn't, but simply because of everything that's been going on in my brain. And then you mentioned Emma.
Complete similarity right there.
What?
The similarity between them asking the question, me talking about Emma.
Yep.
Similarity.
Yep. Anyway, was there more to that?
I know that was my
Okay.
my prediction. I think that, however, in Heartache, that's when he turns Beth down. That's Heartache. And it does seem that Beth never really recovered from the scarlet fever. Like, she remained very sickly, not sickly, but very weak and frail. Like, doing things was harder for her, like post-COVID for most of us. Like,
Yep.
there are still things that I can't do post-COVID.
Same.
And it's been 3 years almost.
Been 2 years from my first bout and over a year from my long COVID of last year. Lisa, do you have predictions going forward?
Not really. You know,
We need some more Beth chapters.
we really do. I feel like we barely hear from Beth.
We barely hear from Beth. We need more Beth chapters.
Well, it's not in next sessions, but you know that the session after that definitely has to have something to do with Beth, since one of the chapters is called Beth's Secret.
Although lately we hear as little about Meg as we do Beth, because Meg is off having a family with 2 babies.
She's busy. She will text
Very
you back
busy.
when she has a minute. Being a new mom is hard.
Yeah, especially after she just got used to being a wife, man.
I know.
Remember that time you used to be a wife before she found out she was mom?
And then, I mean, Meg's off with her babies, and
Amy's
Beth's
off in
sick, and
France.
Amy's off in Europe, and that leaves Joe.
Yeah, Joe's off in New York, and poor Beth. Beth is at home with Marmee. It's fun. Joe's like, you can talk to us. I'll be here for you. Nope, I'm going off to New York.
It's like, oh, you don't want to talk? Never mind.
Well, she has the best of intentions. She's trying to get out of the way in the hopes that Laurie will fall in love with Beth while she's gone.
Matchmaking at its finest.
Well, I don't know if I would call it its finest, but she has the best intentions. And at least it's matchmaking far more hands-off than anything that Mrs. Bennet ever did. Lisa, do you agree with Karen as far as the
Predictions.
yeah, well, as far as whether Joe is correct or incorrect regarding Beth's.
It's hard to tell because we only have what Joe saw, and Joe is a romantic and sees things where she shouldn't. So it could be
Yes.
that Joe was right, or Joe could be entirely wrong.
It will never stop being so ironic to me that Joe is a romantic when she's also the one who's like, nobody should get married. Everybody stay home and stay exactly the same.
Because she doesn't like change. Okay.
She
She likes
doesn't
the
like,
idea of
she's a
romance.
romantic and the adventurer who wants everybody to stay at home and nothing to ever change and nobody to go anywhere. She's such a contradiction and I love it. But yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from on that. That it is definitely very hard to tell one way or the other because Joe tends to be very, very certain of her own mind and her own observations of things, whether it turns out to be true or not, as we have witnessed multiple times. So, we shall have to see.
He being a mama's baby.
I was trying to think if there's anything else I could ask about, but I can't think of anything. Well, how far did you guys get on stuff?
I finished one bottle bag and started another.
Nice.
I'm on the 3rd round, but I'm having issue with knots in my string today. It's like every time I turn around, I have a knot in my string.
Naughty string.
Yeah, but that's about how far I got right there.
Very
Cute.
nice.
Yeah, I'm about halfway done.
Nice.
I got like 3 rows done,
Nice.
which is more than the like 1.5 that I got done last time I was working on this while we were talking. Because I have just not been focusing on this well. And now I have till the end of next week to finish it. And it's crunch time.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to getting stuff done during book club meetings, I don't plan to get too much productive because we're talking and chatting.
Well,
I'm
I do okay
not
with the
multitasking.
producing things while talking and chatting. It's the while talking and chatting and only the course of 1 hour.
Come on, not. You got this.
All right. Well, that covers that. So I am going to